Nick C. If I understand correctly, Scientology does a bit of bait and switch in its treatment of gay people. When a gay person first walks in the door and starts doing introductory services, they're assured that it's okay to be gay in Scientology. As they progress, however, they are told that their condition must be handled. But what kind of handling is implied here? Does Scientology have a gay conversion program in place? Or is the gay person simply expected to go back into the closet? Or become sexually inactive? Or something else altogether? All right, like many other things in Scientology, this has a lot of seemingly contradictory ideas and weird sort of practices and standards in place here. So let's see if we can't talk about this, break this down a little bit. There's a lot here, and I'm trying to crunch a lot into a short period of time. So, so let me do my best. Basically, the Church of Scientology attitude or the philosophy about its members are that Scientologists should be ethical, productive people, the able of society, who are going to come into Scientology and are going to rehabilitate their spiritual state as an immortal spiritual being. And that thetan is tied to, in this time and place, and for quite some time, over the millennia that this universe has existed, this thetan has been tied to a body. A male body, a female body, an alien body, different kinds of bodies. There's been millions of them down the years that we've all been around in this universe, according to L. Ron Hubbard. There have been cat people and, people who have been kind of oriented in that direction. And there have been invader forces with bodies that have big claws, lobster claws, and big antenna and alien, bodies and things. Yet here and now, there is this idea that despite this variety and diversity of bodies and species and life that we've experienced in this universe, there is this insistence that here on Earth, at this time and place, you have a male body or a female body. And if you do not align your thinking to and align your actions, your sexual activity, to the gender of this body that you randomly picked up, because people don't go after specific kinds of bodies usually. You just kind of go get whatever body is available in the hospital when you are flitting about as a thetan ready to pick up another body. You go pick one up and you are supposed to raise it, and you're supposed to act in accordance with its gender. That right there doesn't make a lot of sense, right? If you see the whole picture I'm putting together here, then you see that gender or sexual orientation shouldn't matter at all to a spiritual entity who has lived every gender and every identity, good guy, bad guy, over and over, thousands and thousands and millions of times over the course of a thetan's life. Why would this be of such importance? Because Hubbard said it was, really for no other reason than that. It's not a logically consistent position that you have lived all these lives, that you are an immortal spiritual being, and yet you have to conform with the gender identity of your body in this lifetime that you're in right now. But that is the way that Hubbard thinks things should be. He was raised in the Midwest, turn of the century. He's about as conservative, classically conservative social views as you can get. And he was preaching out of 1950s and 60s. So there was no such thing as sexual liberties or liberation or equal rights or any of that. So that I just wanted to kind of expound on that a little bit to kind of lay a baseline there so you could see where Scientology actually sits. It sits in on this topic of homosexuality or sexual orientation. It sits on a bedrock of hypocrisy and nonsense. It doesn't make any sense, right? That morally speaking or ethically speaking, a spiritual entity would have to comply with the gender or identity of the body that it's picked up. But Hubbard insisted on this, and Scientologists don't really think about it too much. So what they're trying to do to get to the here and now and the practical matter of Scientology is when a person comes in who is not a straight, cis male or female, traditional gender roles, if they step outside of that in any way, have attraction for same sex for some reason at any level of the spectrum, whether you're full on, bisexual or homosexual or pansexual, whatever it is, if it's not straight, cis, male, or female, then it is considered unethical. It's the idea as to why it would be unethical. Well, it really doesn't make a lot of sense based on everything I just explained to you. But the way they think about this in Scientology is that if you're doing perverse sexual activity, something that's not cis activity, then you are re-stimulating past incidents of unethical behavior where you're being a male, but you're acting like a female. That somehow in Hubbard's mind and in the world of Scientology, this is unethical activity. You're actually doing yourself harm by not, being the body that you have and are supposed to be. So it's an ethics problem, right? It's like it's like how people think of people who have a drinking problem or who have a sexual addiction problem or, some kind of problem like that. You think, there's something a little off with that person. And we've, of course, with addiction, we are learning now that, the whole ethical judgment value on that isn't really so helpful to helping people out of conditions or addictions that they're in. But Scientology is not a progressive situation. They're not up with that. They are perfectly happy to judge you as much and as hard as they want to if you're doing something that Scientologists think is unethical. So what they're trying to do in auditing you or addressing your homosexuality, let's say, is they're trying to get you to act differently in the real world. With an eye toward eventually stripping out of your being any urge or tendency you have to commit sexual activity that is not your gender identity, right? Not your body. So so the first level is just get you to stop acting on your thoughts. Okay, get you to stop having gay sex, stop giving into your attractions or desires to maybe watch porn or hook up with people of the same sex or whatever the situation is, right? I'm using homosexuality as an example here, but, it could be any, what they would call a dramatization, right? Any activity in the real world, they want you to knock that off. And that's going to be the first level of handling, is they're going to show you L. Ron Hubbard's writings about why homosexuality or perverted activity is unethical and restimulative and will cause your bank to build up even more. Your bank being your reactive mind, the stresses and traumas of your life, as a thetan, over the millennia, have accumulated in this thing called a reactive mind, and it acts against you and makes you act in ways that are not rational or sane, according to L. Ron Hubbard. So the first thing they want you to do is get discipline in on that, control that, right? Control yourself. Again, with the idea being that it's unethical activity, and if you're doing something that is unethical, then you're not going to get any gains from the auditing that you're getting, okay? In the same way that if you were stealing from your company or you were cheating on your wife or something, you'd also be doing something unethical, and so they would discourage that because they want you to get gains from your auditing. Now, the auditing that they're going to give you is going to be, there's different kinds of auditing that they can give you to address homosexual urges or tendencies or anything, perverted activities. They could address it with Dianetics. They could go and look for engrams, incidents of pain and unconsciousness in your past, and go explore those and relive them and sort of try to blow the stress and trauma and the charge that's connected with that. And maybe that will somehow pop the urge you have, right? Because the idea is that there's something in you, there's something making you act that way, in this perverted way. And that something is a decision that you made, a series of decisions that you made, a number of decisions you've made called postulates. Decisions about how you're going to be or how you're going to act or how things are. This is a postulate is a way a thetan creates things, and you can create your own trouble by postulating way in the past. Maybe you postulated some things that are counter gender identity, right? You've postulated that you're always that females are always the ones who have it easy, and so you're always going to be a female. And then ruck of the die, you got a male body, but you still have this postulate from the past that females are the ones who have it easy, and so you're always going to be a female, but here you are stuck with a male body, and so now you're acting like a female in a male body, and that's weird, and it's perverted, and it's strange, and you shouldn't be doing that. And it's all because of this postulate you made, you see. So if in Scientology, if you can go and pop that postulate and recognize that that's what you're operating on, because you would have forgotten about this. It was lifetimes ago, and it's sort of subconsciously affecting you now, you see. But if you can go in your auditing and release that, then you wouldn't have that urge anymore. There are also evil intentions or evil purposes that you could have postulated or created back in the past that could be affecting your identity now, your sexual identity, and you could imagine 1,000 different evil purposes that might be on this line, like I want to destroy all women, right? I don't know, something happened to you 10 million years ago, and you decided you're going to destroy all women, and from that point forward, that's always going to kind of be in your thinking. You're going to be kind of terrible to women, and this kind of thing. I have to say right now, of course, this is all just L. Ron Hubbard stuff. I don't believe any of this is true, but this is what they think in Scientology, okay? So you made some evil purpose or some destructive intention to kill all women, and now here you are, and you're in a female body, and you have this intention to destroy all women, and it's sort of sitting there at the root of your thinking, and you got all kinds of you got thousands of these purposes and intentions and ideas building up. So really, this is all just a way of rationalizing behavior in Scientology using these ideas of postulates and evil purposes. And the idea is you can go into an auditing session and there's different ways you could address it, but you can find that evil purpose and you can pop that, right? Because the idea in Scientology auditing is if you recognize something, you see it for what it is, it's supposed to go away. It's supposed to not bother you or be a problem anymore. It doesn't ever really work out that way, of course, but that's the theory in Scientology is by viewing something completely and totally as it is, you make it vanish and disappear forever. So the idea is you're trying to find these postulates or find these evil purposes or destructive intentions and see them fully for what they are at the time you created them millions of years ago, right? And thereby make them blow, and so you don't have that problem anymore. And then, theoretically, you wouldn't have the urge to have gay sex anymore. You wouldn't have the urge to destroy all women or, be a woman or be a man or whatever the thing is that's screwing you up. Okay, I know this all sounds nuts, okay? And I feel a little nuts even explaining it right now because this used to make a lot more sense to me, and now I'm talking about it, and I'm like, this really doesn't make any sense. But this is how Scientologists think about this, and I thought I would give the most detailed answer I could to try to explain why they think that auditing is something that will work on this. It is not, the way they might go about trying to find those evil purposes or those destructive intentions. There's about 3 or 4 different ways, different kind of auditing procedures that can be done to look for those things, and they will start on that kind of a program. And they might also, there's going to be a lot of security checking on the subject of sex, gay sex, perverted activities, from your childhood, etc. They're going to want to clean all that up and get all of your overts, your sins off. So there's going to be sex checking also. And this is the kind of program you can expect. And I watched some people go through programs like this when I was in Scientology. And I saw one guy who was very flamboyantly gay. He was a hairdresser in Santa Barbara, a really nice guy, super nice, and he struggled with this for years. But he said that he got this auditing and he no longer felt like he was gay anymore, even though he certainly looked and acted like he was gay, but he didn't practice, homosexual sex anymore. And so Scientology was happy with him. But oddly, I don't think he ever got too much farther, now that I think about it, after he did that auditing. I think he kind of took off after that. So maybe they weren't so successful at auditing the gay away. There was another woman who was a practicing homosexual who was trying to get to the level of clear and then move on to OT. And the case supervisor in that circumstance told me there was no way she was ever going to get onto the OT levels if she was still a practicing homosexual. And so they were trying to address her problem with a specific advanced form of Dianetics that looks for evil purposes. So it's called expanded Dianetics. So, like I said, there's different ways you can go about it. And I knew about 3 or 4 people. I'm thinking about 2 other people right now that I knew over the years. And basically, they just didn't go any further than the state of clear. They kind of came in and were in Scientology for a while, and then they took off. I've never met anybody who claimed to be or was okay with being homosexual or having any kind of LGBT ideas or urges or identity, who was an OT in Scientology. We have rumors about John Travolta, and there have been rumors in the past about Tom Cruise, which I've never believed. Tom Cruise doesn't have a gay bone in his body, as far as I can tell. John Travolta, on the other hand, does seem to, and I think that he got onto the OT levels simply because they were desperate to keep him in Scientology or get him onto the good stuff. And this was back in the 80s that he first got onto the OT levels, I believe, and that things were a little looser back then. All this anti-gay stuff and really coming down hard on this is something that is more an artifact of Miscavige's time in Scientology. Even though in the 60s and 70s there were, gay people coming around in Scientology, but they didn't really talk about it as much or be as open about it. So I don't have as much information about, what the culture was like for gay people in Scientology prior to my time in it, right? They didn't really talk about it a lot. So anyway, there's a whole bleh on that, and I hope that helped answer your question, Nick, and give you some idea of what's what with all of that.